How does a son decide his father no longer belongs in his own home? While you're here, don't forget to subscribe, hit the hype button, and support this channel with a like. And tell us below, have you ever faced something like this? I watched Evan walk past me like I was furniture. Not rudely, exactly. Just the way you'd move around a lamp you'd stopped noticing years ago. He reached for the remote without asking, changed the channel I'd been watching, and dropped onto the couch with his phone already out. Hey, Dad. He didn't look up. Laura's coming over. We're ordering Thai. I was sitting 3 feet away. Had been for the past hour, reading the newspaper I'd folded across my knee. The evening news had just started covering a mining accident in Colorado, something I actually understood, something I'd spent 30 years preventing at sites across 4 states. But the channel was gone now, replaced by some streaming show I'd never heard of. I was watching that, I said quietly. Evan glanced at me, smiled a little, not mean, just distant. Oh, sorry, didn't realize you were still up. I was sitting right there. Laura arrived 20 minutes later. She had a key now. I didn't remember giving her one, but I supposed Evan had. She came in without knocking, kicked off her shoes in the entryway, and immediately started rearranging the throw pillows on the couch I'd just been sitting on. These look better stacked, don't you think? She wasn't asking me. She was asking Evan, who nodded without looking up from his phone. I stood and moved toward the kitchen. Nobody said anything. Nobody offered to include me in the dinner order. I opened the fridge, stared at the leftovers I'd labeled with my name, and decided I wasn't hungry anyway. The house felt smaller than it used to, not because of the furniture or the people, but because of the way they occupied space. Evan and Laura sprawled. They left shoes everywhere, stacked dishes in the sink, played music late into the night. Not loud enough to complain about, but loud enough that I couldn't pretend I lived alone anymore. I'd bought this house in 1994, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a garage I'd converted into a workshop because I liked working with my hands when I wasn't underground. The mortgage had been brutal the first few years, but I'd paid it off early. No liens, no cosigners. Just my name on the title, my sweat in the walls. Evan had moved in 6 months ago. Temporarily, he'd said, just until he and Laura found a place. The market was tough, rent was high, and he needed to save up. I'd said yes because that's what fathers do. You help your kids. You give them a foundation. But 6 months had turned into something else, something I couldn't quite name yet. Hey, Dad. Evan appeared in the kitchen doorway holding his wallet. Laura and I were talking, about the house. I turned from the fridge. What about it? He leaned against the doorframe, casual, comfortable. Well, we've been here a while now, and we're basically covering most of the utilities and groceries and stuff. It just seems like maybe we should, formalize things a little. Formalize? Yeah, like you're obviously welcome to stay. But maybe it makes sense if you chip in a little, Rent. The word landed between us like a stone. I didn't raise my voice, didn't move, just looked at him, this man I'd raised, this boy I'd taught to ride a bike and balance a checkbook and treat people with basic respect. Rent, I repeated. Nothing crazy. Just like $500 a month. Maybe 6. We can figure it out. He smiled. That same distant smile. I mean, it's fair, right? You're living here too. Laura appeared behind him, nodding. It would help us save faster, for our own place. I could have said 100 things. Could have reminded him whose name was on the deed, whose credit had secured the loan, whose paycheck had kept the lights on for 30 years. Could have asked him when, exactly, he'd started thinking of this house as his. But I didn't. I just nodded slowly and said, I'll think about it. Evan's smile widened. Cool. Thanks, Dad. I knew you'd get it. He walked back to the living room. Laura followed. I heard them laugh about something, heard the Thai delivery arrive a few minutes later, heard them eat without offering me any. I stood in the kitchen until the house went quiet. Then I walked down the hallway to the smallest bedroom, the one I'd turned into an office when Evan moved into the master. I opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet and pulled out a folder I hadn't touched in years. Inside were the original purchase documents. The title, the loan papers stamped paid in full, every receipt, every tax record, every proof of ownership I'd ever needed. I spread them across the desk and stared at them for a long time. Then I made a list. The cafe on Oak Street smelled like burnt espresso and old pastries. I sat in the corner booth, the one where the vinyl was cracked and the table wobbled if you leaned too hard. I'd been coming here for 15 years. Knew the owner, knew the regulars, knew which days they ran out of blueberry muffins by 9 in the morning. Ruth Calder was already there when I arrived. She waved from across the room, her gray hair pulled back in the same bun she'd worn since I met her. Retired school teacher, lived 2 houses down, had watched Evan grow up, had brought casseroles when my wife passed, had been the kind of neighbor who noticed things. Asher. She smiled as I sat down. Haven't seen you in a while. Been busy? I'll bet. She stirred her coffee slowly, eyes sharp behind her wire-rimmed glasses. How's Evan? I didn't answer right away, just ordered black coffee from the waitress and stared out the window at the parking lot. A truck with a missing taillight sat crooked across 2 spaces. Someone had left a shopping cart against the curb. He's fine, I said eventually. Ruth made a small noise in her throat. Not agreement, not disagreement, just acknowledgement. I saw him last week. He was out front with that girl. Laura, right? Right. They were talking to the Hendersons, loud. She paused. He was telling them about some renovation plans, new deck, bigger kitchen. Sounded like he had a lot of ideas. I drank my coffee. It was too hot and tasted like metal. He say anything about asking you first? Ruth's voice was careful, neutral. No. She nodded slowly. Thought not. We sat in silence for a while. The cafe filled up with the morning crowd. Construction workers grabbing breakfast burritos. Office people checking their phones. A woman with a toddler trying to keep him from climbing under the table. When did it start? Ruth asked quietly. I knew what she meant. When did my son stop seeing me as his father and start seeing me as something else? Someone else, some obstacle. I don't know, I said. Maybe it was always there. Maybe I just didn't notice. Ruth reached across the table and squeezed my hand once. Brief, firm. Then she pulled back and finished her coffee. You're a good man, Asher. Don't let anyone make you forget that. I thanked her and left. The garage was cooler than the house. I kept the side door open for airflow, and the concrete floor stayed shaded most of the day. My workshop took up the back half. Pegboards lined with tools I'd collected over decades, a workbench my father had built, a table saw I'd restored myself. I stood in the doorway and looked at it all. This was mine. Not shared, not borrowed, mine. I'd let Evan move in because he'd asked, because he was my son, because I thought he needed help getting on his feet after his last job fell through. I'd cleared out the master bedroom, moved my things into the smaller room, told myself it was temporary. But temporary had rules. Temporary meant gratitude. Temporary meant respect. Evan didn't knock anymore. Didn't ask before inviting people over. Didn't clean up after himself or contribute to the mortgage or even pretend this wasn't exactly what he'd wanted all along. And maybe that was on me. Maybe I'd been too accommodating, too quiet, too willing to shrink into the corners of my own home just to keep the peace. I picked up a wrench from the workbench and turned it over in my hands. Solid, functional, predictable. I should have said something months ago. The neighborhood sidewalk was cracked in places, weeds pushing through where the concrete had buckled. I walked it every evening, same route, same rhythm, past the Hendersons' house with the rusted swing set, past the Miller's place with the overgrown hedge, past the empty lot where they'd torn down the old pharmacy. I was halfway through the loop when I heard Evan's voice. He was standing in front of the house. Our house. My house. Talking to Jim Henderson, gesturing broadly with his hands. Yeah, man, we're thinking about redoing the whole backyard, Evan was saying. Maybe a fire pit. Laura wants a garden. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it, you know? It's our place. Jim nodded politely. He was older than me, retired from the post office, spent most of his time fishing. He caught my eye over Evan's shoulder and gave me a small, uncomfortable nod. I kept walking. Hey, Dad, Evan called out. I stopped, turned. Jim was just asking about the house, Evan said. I was telling him about the upgrades we're planning. Sounds good, I said evenly. Evan grinned. Yeah, it's going to be great. You're lucky you get to stick around and see it all come together. Lucky. Jim shifted his weight, looked down at his shoes. I nodded once and kept walking. That night, I sat in my office with the door closed. The documents were still spread across the desk where I'd left them. I added more. Bank statements showing 30 years of mortgage payments, tax records, utility bills in my name. Every piece of paper that proved what I already knew. This house was mine. Not ours. Not his. Mine. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed. Martin Cole, real estate attorney. We'd worked together years ago on a contract dispute at one of the mining sites. He was sharp, honest, didn't waste time. I dialed. He answered on the third ring. Asher, been a while. Martin, I need some advice. Legal or personal? I looked at the documents on my desk, at the title with my name alone, at the folder marked Paid in Full. Both, I said. The kitchen was dark except for the light above the stove. I stood at the counter, reheating soup I'd made 2 days ago, listening to Evan and Laura laugh in the living room. Some show I'd never heard of. Some inside joke I wasn't part of. I ate standing up, rinsed the bowl, dried it, put it back in the cabinet exactly where it belonged. Evan walked in as I was wiping down the counter. He opened the fridge, stared at the contents for a long moment, then closed it without taking anything. "So," he said, "about the rent thing." I folded the dish towel and hung it on the oven handle. "What about it?" "I was thinking we could start next month, first of the month. Easy to remember." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, casual, confident. "600 sound fair?" "You said 500 last week." "Yeah, but utilities went up. And wear and tear. It's a lot to maintain a house." He smiled. "You get it." I turned to face him fully. Looked at this man who had my eyes, my build, my last name. Tried to remember when I'd stopped recognizing him. "Evan," I said quietly. "Whose house is this?" He blinked. "What do you mean?" "Whose name is on the title?" "I mean, technically yours. But come on, Dad. I've been living here for months. I've put work into this place. Me and Laura, we've made it better. We've basically been taking care of everything. Everything. Yeah, groceries, bills, upkeep, I didn't argue, didn't point out that I'd paid the property tax last month, that I'd fixed the leaking faucet he'd ignored for weeks, that every utility bill still came to my name, my account, my responsibility. "So, you think you're taking care of me?" I said. "I didn't say that. You said I should pay rent. In my own house. Because you've been here 6 months and decided it's yours now." Evan's smile faded. "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" He pushed off the counter, irritation creeping into his voice. "Look, I'm just trying to make this fair for everyone. You're acting like I'm trying to kick you out or something." "Are you?" "What? No, of course not." He ran a hand through his hair, exhaled sharply. "But, eventually Laura and I are going to want our own space. And if we're living here, it makes sense to, plan for that. Maybe down the line we buy you out or something. I don't know. We can figure it out." "Buy me out. Of my own house." I stared at him for a long moment. He stared back, defiant now, convinced he was right. "I'll think about it," I said again. "Dad, come on. Don't be difficult." "I'm not being difficult. I'm being thoughtful." Evan opened his mouth, closed it, then shook his head and walked out. I heard him mutter something to Laura. Heard her respond in a low voice. Heard them both laugh. I stood in the dark kitchen until the house went quiet again. Then I went to my office. The folder was thicker now. I'd added notes, questions, dates, a timeline of when things had shifted, when Evan had stopped asking and started assuming, when this house had stopped being mine in his mind. I opened my laptop and pulled up the email Martin had sent me that afternoon. "Asher, good to hear from you. Based on what you've described, here's the situation. 1. The property is solely in your name. No joint tenancy, no co-ownership. You have full legal rights. 2. Your son is considered an occupant, not a tenant, since no formal lease exists and no rent has been paid. 3. You can terminate his occupancy at any time. In this state, you must provide written notice, 30 days for month-to-month occupancy. 4. If he refuses to leave after the notice period, you can file for formal proceedings through the county. 5. Document everything. Keep copies of all communications. Let me know if you want to proceed. I can draft the notice whenever you're ready. Martin. I read it 3 times. Then I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. This was my house, my life, my space, and I was done shrinking. The next morning, Laura was in the living room rearranging furniture again. She'd moved the couch, shifted the coffee table, stacked books in a new corner. I stood in the doorway, coffee in hand, watching her work. "Morning," I said. She glanced up, smiled briefly. "Morning, I'm just making some changes. This layout flows better, don't you think? I liked it the way it was." "Oh." She paused, then kept moving things. "Well, change is good. Keeps things fresh." I didn't respond. Just watched her redecorate my living room without asking, without considering, without acknowledging that maybe, just maybe, I had an opinion that mattered. "Evan's still asleep," she added. "We were up late looking at furniture online. There's this dining set we really love, thinking about getting it next month." "For here?" "Yeah, the current table is kind of old, no offense." I'd built that table 15 years ago. Solid oak, dovetail joints. One of the first projects I'd tackled after my wife passed when I needed something to keep my hands busy and my mind occupied. None taken, I said. Laura smiled and went back to her rearranging. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, and went to my office. Martin's email was still open on my laptop. I hit reply and typed 3 words. Draft the notice. Martin's office was downtown, on the 3rd floor of a building that had been new in the 70s and hadn't been updated since. The elevator groaned. The carpet was beige and threadbare. A ficus in the corner was half plastic and barely surviving. But Martin's desk was clean, his suit was pressed, and when I walked in, he stood and shook my hand like I mattered. Asher, good to see you. You too. We sat. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a single document, neatly typed, official-looking. I scanned the first few lines. Notice to vacate to Evan Trevon from Asher Trevon, property owner. R.E. Termination of occupancy at 428 Maple Drive. This is it? I asked. That's it. Simple, clear, legal. You give him 30 days from the date you deliver it. After that, if he hasn't left, we file for formal removal. But most people don't want it to go that far. And if he does? Then we go to court. But honestly, Asher, once people see the paperwork, they usually understand the situation. Martin leaned back in his chair. You own the house. He doesn't. It's not complicated. I read through the rest of the document. It was 2 pages. Straightforward language, no loopholes, no ambiguity. And this is enforceable? Completely. You're not evicting a tenant. You're terminating occupancy of a guest who's overstayed. It's actually simpler than most cases I handle. He tapped the folder. The law is very clear about property rights. The person on the title has final say, period. I set the document down, stared at it. The paper was crisp, official. My name typed cleanly at the bottom as property owner. Evan's name at the top as occupant. What if he argues? I asked. About what? He has no legal standing. He's never paid rent, never signed a lease, never contributed to the mortgage. In the eyes of the law, he's a guest, and guests can be asked to leave. He thinks it's his house. Martin nodded slowly. I'm sure he does. But thinking doesn't make it true. The county records are very clear. I pulled them this morning, actually. He opened another folder and slid a printout across the desk. Property purchased April 1994. Sole owner, Asher Trevon. Mortgage satisfied February 2009. No liens, no encumbrances. No secondary names added at any point. I looked at the document. There it was in black and white. Everything I already knew but somehow needed to see confirmed by someone else. He's been talking about buying me out, I said quietly. Martin's eyebrows rose. Buying you out of your own house? He mentioned it, said maybe down the line they'd want to make it official. Down the line? Martin shook his head. Asher, let me be very clear. Unless you choose to sell or transfer the property, it remains yours. Your son has no claim. None. And if he's been telling people otherwise, that's a problem. And not a legal one yet, but definitely a problem. I thought about Evan on the sidewalk, telling Jim Henderson about our place. Thought about Laura rearranging furniture like she owned it. Thought about the rent demand delivered with a smile, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. How many of these cases do you handle? I asked. Family property disputes? More than you'd think. Usually it's adult children who move back home and forget their guests. Sometimes it's relatives who overstay after a crisis. The pattern is always the same. Boundaries disappear, respect erodes, and the property owner ends up feeling like a stranger in their own space. That's exactly it, I said. I know. And I'm telling you right now, you have every right to reclaim your space. This isn't cruel. This isn't unreasonable. This is you enforcing a boundary that should have been respected from day one. I picked up the notice again. Read it more carefully this time. The language was firm, but not hostile. Professional, factual. When do I give it to him? I asked. Whenever you're ready. Just make sure you keep a copy. Document the date and time you delivered it. If possible, have a witness. And Asher? Martin leaned forward. Once you hand him that paper, things will change. He'll be angry. He'll argue. He might even threaten. But you stay calm. You stay factual. This is a legal process now, not a family conversation. I nodded slowly. Understood. Good. Because I've seen a lot of family situations like this. Parents who let their kids move in and suddenly find themselves invisible in their own homes. You don't owe him unlimited grace. You've been more than generous. I thanked him and left with the folder under my arm. The bank was 2 blocks away. I walked there slowly, letting the afternoon sun warm my shoulders. The teller recognized me. I'd been coming here for 23 years. "Mr. Trevon, what can I do for you today?" "I need to pull some records. Mortgage payment history, property tax, utility account summaries." She nodded and tapped at her keyboard. "Going back how far?" 30 years. Her eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't comment. Just kept typing. "This might take a few minutes. You can have a seat if you'd like." I sat in one of the chairs by the window, watched people walk by outside. A mother with a stroller, a teenager on a skateboard, an old man with a dog that kept stopping to smell every tree. Normal lives, normal problems. The teller called me back after 10 minutes. She handed me a thick envelope. "Everything you requested. There's a small fee for the printouts." "That's fine." I paid and left. The county records office was across town. I drove there in silence, windows down, radio off. The building was squat and gray, surrounded by parking meters that only took quarters. I fed 3 into the slot and went inside. The clerk was younger than me, maybe 40, with tired eyes and a name tag that said Brenda. "I need to verify property ownership," I said. "Address?" 428 Maple Drive, she typed. Waited. Typed some more, then turned the monitor toward me. "Asher Trevon, sole owner. Purchased 1994, paid in full 2009. Current property tax up to date. Is that what you needed?" "Can I get a certified copy of the title?" "Sure, $20 fee." I paid. She printed it, stamped it, slid it across the counter in a protective sleeve. "Anything else?" "No, thank you." I walked back to my truck with the envelope from the bank in one hand and the certified title in the other. 2 pieces of paper that proved what I already knew, what Evan had forgotten, what Laura had never bothered to learn. This house was mine. I sat in the truck for a while, engine off, windows still down, thought about what Martin had said, about boundaries and respect and reclaiming space, thought about Evan's face when I handed him the notice, thought about whether I was really ready to do this. Then I thought about the rent demand again, about being called lucky to live in my own house, about watching my son treat me like an obstacle instead of a father. I started the engine and drove home. The house was empty when I got back. Evan's car was gone, Laura's too. I went straight to my office and spread everything out on the desk. The notice from Martin, the bank records, the certified title. 3 decades of proof that this space belonged to me. I made copies of everything. Put the originals in a fireproof lockbox I kept in the closet. Put the copies in a folder I could access easily. Then I sat down and wrote out a timeline by hand. Every moment I could remember when things had shifted, when Evan had stopped asking permission, when Laura had started making decisions without consulting me, when my own home had stopped feeling like mine. It filled 2 pages. I folded them and put them in the folder with the copies. Then I opened my laptop and composed an email to Martin. "Ready to proceed. We'll deliver notice this week. We'll document everything." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. My phone buzzed 30 seconds later. "Good. Call me if you need anything. You're doing the right thing?" I set the phone down and looked around my office. This small room with my father's workbench visible through the window. This space I'd carved out when everything else had been taken over. Not anymore, not ever again. The notice sat in my desk drawer for 3 days. I'd open the drawer every morning, look at it, then close it again. Not because I was uncertain, because I was waiting for the right moment. Evan announced it himself. "Hey, Dad." He stuck his head into my office Thursday evening. We're having people over Saturday night. Laura's idea, just a dinner thing. You should come." "Who's coming?" "Some friends. Laura's co-workers. Maybe Jim and Patricia from next door." He grinned. "We figured it's time we actually use the dining room, you know? Make the house feel more social." "Sounds nice," I said. "Cool. Laura's gonna cook." "Well, we're gonna cook together. Should be fun." He started to leave, then turned back. "Oh, and we were thinking maybe after dinner we could talk about the rent thing. You know, make it official, get everyone on the same page." "Everyone?" "I mean, you and me and Laura, just so we're all clear on expectations going forward." He shrugged. "No pressure. Just makes sense to have the conversation." I nodded slowly. "Okay. Great. See you Saturday." He left. I heard him telling Laura about it in the living room. Heard her laugh and say something about finally getting things settled. I opened the drawer and looked at the notice again. Saturday would work just fine. The next 2 days passed slowly. I went to the mining site office Friday morning, reviewed some reports, signed off on a safety protocol update. My supervisor asked if I was feeling okay, said I seemed distracted. Just thinking about some things at home, I said. Everything all right? It will be. I left early and stopped at the hardware store on the way back. Bought a new deadbolt for my office door. Installed it that afternoon while Evan and Laura were out. They didn't need access to my space anymore. Saturday morning, Laura was in the kitchen early, prepping food. Vegetables lined the counter. A chicken sat in a roasting pan. She hummed while she worked, moving around the space like she owned it. Big dinner tonight, I said from the doorway. She looked up, smiled. Yeah, I'm excited. It'll be nice to have people over. Really make this place feel like home, you know? This place, home. Need any help? I asked. Oh, that's sweet, but I think I've got it. Evan's going to help with the main course later. You can just relax. Relax, in my own house. While she cooked in my kitchen for a dinner party I hadn't planned. Okay, I said. I spent the day in the garage, organized tools, swept the floor, kept my hands busy while my mind stayed focused. The notice was in my office, waiting. 3 copies printed. 1 for Evan, 1 for my records, 1 for Martin. At 6, people started arriving. Jim and Patricia from next door. 2 women I didn't know, Laura's co-workers apparently. A guy named Derek who worked with Evan. They filled the living room with noise and laughter, drinking wine Laura had bought with my credit card without asking. I stayed in the background, watched, listened. Evan played host, showed people around, pointed out the changes they'd made, talked about future plans like they were certain. We're thinking about knocking out this wall, he said, gesturing between the living room and kitchen. Open concept, really modernize the space. Derek nodded appreciatively. That'd be sick. This place has good bones. You could do a lot with it. Yeah, that's what we're thinking. It's going to take some work, but it'll be worth it. Jim caught my eye from across the room, raised his eyebrows slightly. I just nodded and sipped my water. Dinner was served at 7. Everyone crowded around the dining room table I'd built with my own hands. The table Laura had called old, the table she wanted to replace. Evan sat at the head. Not me. Him. I took a seat near the middle. Nobody seemed to notice. The food was good. Laura had made roast chicken, mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables. People complimented her. She beamed. Evan put his hand on hers and squeezed. To new beginnings, he said, raising his glass. Everyone raised theirs. Even me. After dessert, people started filtering back to the living room. Coffee was made. Someone put music on low. The conversation drifted to work, weather, weekend plans. Evan cleared his throat. Hey, everyone. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to take a minute. You know, Laura and I have been living here for a while now, and we really feel like we've made this place our own. It's been great, and we're really excited about the future. People nodded, smiled. We've actually been talking with my dad about formalizing some things, making sure everyone's on the same page about how the household runs. Nothing major, just, being adults about it. He looked at me. Right, Dad. All eyes turned to me. I stood up slowly. Walked to my office. Came back with 3 envelopes. The room went quiet. I handed 1 envelope to Evan, kept 1 for myself, set the 3rd on the table. What's this? Evan asked, smile still on his face. Open it. He did. Laura leaned over to read it with him. I watched their faces change, watched the smile disappear, watched confusion replace confidence. Is this a joke? Evan's voice was tight. No. A notice to vacate? You're seriously... What is this? I stayed calm, kept my voice level. It's exactly what it says. You have 30 days to find other accommodations and move out. Laura's face went pale. You can't do this. I can. I have. This house is mine. Solely mine. Your guests who've overstayed. Evan stood up fast enough to knock his chair back. Guests? Are you serious right now? I'm your son. And this is my house. We've been living here for months. We've put money into this place. We've been taking care of everything. No, Evan, you haven't. I've paid every mortgage payment, every property tax bill, every utility. You've contributed nothing except the assumption that this was already yours. The room was completely silent. Jim and Patricia were staring at their laps. Laura's co-workers looked like they wanted to disappear. Derek was frozen with his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. You asked me to pay rent, I continued, in my own house. You told the neighbors this was your place. You made plans to renovate without asking me. You sat at the head of my table like you belonged there? Because I thought, Evan's voice cracked. I thought we were building something together. I thought you wanted us here. I wanted to help you get on your feet. 6 months ago, you said you needed temporary help. Temporary, Evan, not permanent, not ownership. So that's it? You're just kicking us out. I'm reclaiming my home. Yes. Laura was crying now. Quiet, angry tears. This is cruel. You're his father. How can you do this? How could you redecorate my house without asking? How could you talk about replacing my furniture? How could you treat me like I was lucky to be here? She didn't answer. Evan's hands were shaking. If we leave, that's it. You understand that? I'm not coming back. I'm not fixing this. I understand. I'm your only son, and this is my only house. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he grabbed the notice, crumpled it, and threw it on the floor. You'll get a copy in the mail anyway, I said quietly. That was just a courtesy. Courtesy? He laughed, sharp and bitter. Right. You're so courteous, Dad. Ambushing me in front of our friends. Real classy. You wanted to discuss household expectations in front of everyone, so I did. Evan grabbed his keys from the coffee table. Laura stood, wiping her eyes, and followed. Jim and Patricia were already heading for the door, mumbling apologies. The others followed quickly. Within 5 minutes, the house was empty, except for me. I picked up the crumpled notice from the floor, smoothed it out, put it back in its envelope. Then I collected the dishes from the dining room and started washing them in the sink. The house was quiet. Finally, blessedly quiet. I dried my hands and went to my office. Sent Martin an email with 3 words. Notice delivered. Witnessed. His response came 30 seconds later. Good. Now we wait. I closed the laptop and looked around my office. My small, reclaimed space, my foundation. 30 days. I could wait 30 days. Evan didn't come back that night, or the next morning, or the morning after that. His car appeared Monday afternoon while I was at the mining site office. When I got home, I found the master bedroom door closed, music playing inside, low and deliberately loud. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. What? Evan's voice, muffled and hostile. Just checking if you're here. Where else would I be? You gave me 30 days, remember? I didn't respond, just went to my own room and closed the door. The next 3 weeks were strange. We lived in the same house, but moved around each other like ghosts. Evan stayed in his room or left early, came back late. Laura showed up less and less. When she did, she didn't speak to me, didn't even make eye contact. I'd see her in the hallway sometimes, carrying boxes or bags. She'd turn away, shoulders tight, face set in a hard line. The first few times, I almost said something, almost tried to explain. But what was there to say? The notice had said everything that needed saying. The atmosphere in the house shifted daily. Some mornings I'd wake up to silence, thinking maybe Evan had already left. Then I'd hear footsteps overhead, deliberate and heavy, reminding me he was still there, still counting down the days. The furniture started disappearing. The throw pillows Laura had bought, the coffee table she'd picked out, the kitchen chair she'd reupholstered. Each day, something else vanished. The bookshelf she'd installed, the lamp from the corner, the rug in the entryway. I didn't say anything, just watched things slowly return to how they'd been before. Watched the house shed the layers they'd added, revealing the bones underneath. My bones, my foundation. One evening, I found Laura in the living room, staring at the wall where she'd hung a series of photographs. Family pictures. Some of Evan as a child, some of the two of them together. She was taking them down carefully, wrapping each frame in newspaper. She must have sensed me watching because she stopped, frame in hand, and looked over her shoulder. "These are ours," she said quietly. Not defensive, just stating a fact. "I know." She nodded and went back to wrapping. I watched her for another moment, then went to the kitchen. The next morning, the wall was bare, except for the nail holes. Small wounds in the paint. I'd patch them later. Add them to the list of things to fix once the house was truly mine again. Ruth stopped by during the second week, brought me a casserole and a concerned look. "I heard," she said simply. "I figured." Jim told me. He feels terrible about being there when it happened. "It's fine. He didn't do anything wrong." She set the casserole on my counter and turned to face me. Her eyes searched mine, looking for something. Regret, maybe. Doubt. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "Asher." I stopped unpacking the casserole and looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who'd been my neighbor for 20 years, who'd brought food when my wife passed, who'd never judged, never pushed, just quietly supported. "I'm fine, Ruth. Really. This is what needed to happen." "I know, but that doesn't make it easy." "No, it doesn't." She squeezed my shoulder, held it there for a moment longer than usual. He'll understand eventually. Maybe not now, maybe not for years, but he will. I wanted to believe her, wanted to think that someday Evan would look back and see what I'd had to do, see that boundaries weren't cruelty, that protecting yourself wasn't the same as abandoning someone. But I didn't say any of that, just nodded. She squeezed once more and left. I ate the casserole over the next 4 days. It was good, comfort food. The kind of thing people bring when they don't know what else to do, when words fail and all you have left is sustenance. Evan's anger shifted as the days passed. At first, it was loud, slamming doors, short, bitter comments when we passed in the hallway. "Nice day, isn't it, Dad?" he'd say, voice dripping with sarcasm. Or, "Thanks for the hospitality," when he'd grab something from the kitchen. I never responded, just let the words bounce off me like rain off a roof. Then it went quiet, cold. He stopped acknowledging me entirely, would walk right past me in the hallway like I wasn't there, would leave rooms when I entered them, would turn up the music in his bedroom when I settled in the living room for the evening. I preferred the silence. It was cleaner, easier to navigate. On day 15, I came home to find the dining room chairs rearranged. Not all of them, just 2, moved to opposite ends of the table, as far apart as they could get. A message without words. I moved them back. I put everything exactly where it belonged. The next day, they were moved again. I moved them back again. On the 3rd day, one chair was missing entirely, probably in Evan's room, though I didn't check. Didn't want to give him the satisfaction. Laura came by on day 20 with a truck. Started loading boxes. I watched from the garage, hands busy with a project I didn't need to finish, mind tracking every trip she made from house to truck. She worked efficiently, no wasted movement, box after box, bag after bag, things I recognized, things I didn't. Pieces of a life I'd allowed into my space and was now watching leave. Evan helped her. They worked in silence, methodical, efficient, like a pit crew, like they'd planned it out ahead of time, assigned roles, divided tasks. I wondered if they'd practiced, if they'd spent evenings in that apartment they'd found, mapping out how to move their things as quickly as possible, how to minimize contact with me, how to leave without looking back. When they finished the first load, Laura climbed into the truck and drove away. Evan stayed behind, stood in the driveway for a moment, hands in his pockets, staring at the house. Then he came to find me in the garage. "I need more time," he said without preamble. "You have 10 days. I need more than that. Moving is expensive. I haven't found a place yet." I set down the tool I'd been holding, turned to face him fully. "You just loaded a truck with Laura. Where's that going?" "Storage. We can't afford to move everything into the new place right away. It's smaller than we thought." "That's not my problem." His jaw tightened, muscles working beneath the skin. "You're really not going to help me at all." "I helped you for 6 months. You responded by trying to take my house." "I wasn't trying to take anything. I was just..." He trailed off, looked away. "I thought we were family." "We are family, but that doesn't mean you get to walk over me." "Walk over you?" "Dad, I was trying to contribute. I was trying to make things fair. By charging me rent in my own house. By having us all chip in. It's what adults do." I shook my head slowly. "No, Evan. What adults do is respect other people's property, other people's boundaries. You came here asking for temporary help. I gave it. You decided temporary meant permanent. I'm correcting that." He shook his head, turned to leave, then stopped. His shoulders tensed. When he spoke again, his voice was low. "Dangerous. Mom would be ashamed of you." The words hit like a fist. I set down the tool I'd been holding, looked at him. This man who'd just invoked his mother, who was gone to manipulate me, who'd just exploited the one person who couldn't defend herself for me. "Your mother," I said slowly, carefully, "taught you to respect people, to appreciate what you have, to understand that generosity isn't weakness." I took a step closer, close enough to see his eyes, close enough to make sure he heard every word. "She would be ashamed of how you've treated me, not the other way around." Evan's face went red. His hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might swing at me. Part of me almost wanted him to. Wanted the conflict to become physical. Something I could point to. Something undeniable. But he just turned and walked away. I heard his car start. Heard him peel out of the driveway fast enough to leave rubber on the concrete. Black marks I'd have to scrub off later. I went back to my project. My hands were shaking, but I kept working. Focused on the wood, the grain, the way the tool moved across the surface, shaping it into something solid, something that would last. Day 23, I came home to find more things missing. The microwave, the coffee maker, the toaster. All things they'd brought with them, so technically theirs to take. But it still felt like the house was being hollowed out, gutted. I made coffee the old way. Kettle and a pour-over cone I found in the back of a cabinet. It tasted better than I remembered. Day 25, the bathroom was emptied of their toiletries. The medicine cabinet was bare except for my things. The shower had only my soap, my shampoo. The towel rack held only my towels. The house was slowly becoming mine again. One empty space at a time. Day 27, Martin called. How's it going? He's still here, hasn't packed much. I think he's planning to push the deadline. Let him. If he's not out by midnight on day 30, we file first thing the next morning. After that, it's out of his hands. Okay. Esher, stay strong. You're almost through this. I thanked him and hung up. That evening, Evan knocked on my office door. First time in weeks. The sound was tentative, not angry, almost uncertain. Yeah, I said. He opened the door but didn't come in. Just stood in the doorway, arms crossed. His face was different somehow. Tired. The anger had burned itself out, leaving only exhaustion behind. I found a place. Me and Laura. It's smaller, more expensive, but it's ours. Good. I'll be out by Friday. That's day 29. I know. We stared at each other. I waited for him to say something else. An apology, an acknowledgement, some small recognition that he understood what had happened here, what he'd done, what I'd had to do in response. But he just nodded once and left. I listened to his footsteps retreat down the hallway, heard his bedroom door close, heard the music start up again, but quieter this time, almost background noise. I turned back to my desk, to the documents I'd kept, the timeline I'd written, the proof I'd gathered, 4 more days. Friday came. I went to work early, stayed late, didn't want to be there for the final move, didn't want to see him load the last of his things and drive away, didn't want to risk saying something or having him say something that would make this harder than it already was. When I got home at 8, the house was empty. The master bedroom door stood open. The room was bare. Closet empty. Bathroom cleared out. The walls showed lighter squares where posters had hung. The carpet had indentations where furniture had pressed into it for months. A single key sat on the kitchen counter, right in the center, placed deliberately. No note, no goodbye, just the key. I picked it up, turned it over in my hand. This small piece of metal that used to mean something, that used to represent trust and family and home. Now it just represented the end. I added it to my key ring and went through the house, checking every room, making sure nothing was damaged, nothing missing beyond what they had a right to take. Everything was intact, clean even. He'd left it the way he found it, had even patched a few nail holes in the walls, had swept the floors. Part of me wanted to find something wrong, something to justify the anger I'd been carrying. But there was nothing, just empty space where they'd been. I sat on the couch in the living room, my couch, in my house, in my space, and for the first time in months, I let myself breathe, really breathe. Deep and full and clean, the house was quiet, empty, mine. Ruth came by the next morning with coffee and muffins. She didn't knock, just let herself in like she'd been doing for years. "He's gone?" she asked. "He's gone. How do you feel?" I thought about it, really thought about it. Examined the weight in my chest, the exhaustion in my bones, the strange lightness that came with reclaiming something that should never have been taken. "Relieved," I said finally. "And sad, but mostly relieved." She nodded. "That's honest. I respect that." We drank our coffee on the front porch, watched the neighborhood wake up, normal people doing normal things, living their normal lives. A jogger went past, a dog walker, a kid on a bicycle. The world kept turning. Life kept happening. And I was still here, in my house, on my terms. "You did the right thing," Ruth said after a while. "I hope so." "You did." He needed to learn that respect isn't optional, even from family, especially from family. She paused, sipped her coffee. "It's a hard lesson, but it's an important one." I didn't argue, just finished my coffee and thanked her for coming. After she left, I went to my office and sent Martin a final email. "He's out. It's over. Thank you." His response was immediate. "Glad to hear it. You handled it well. Take care of yourself." I closed the laptop and looked around the room. My office, my space in my house, everything was exactly where it should be. Then I went to the garage and started a new project. something I'd been planning for years but never had the time or energy to start. A rocking chair, solid oak, dovetail joints, built to last. I had time now, I had space now, I had my home back. And that was enough. The first week alone felt strange. Not bad, just different. I woke up when I wanted, made coffee without worrying about noise, watched the morning news at full volume. The house settled back into itself, into me. I rearranged the living room, put everything where it used to be, found the throw pillows I'd stored in the garage and brought them back in, dusted the shelves Laura had cleared for her books. The dining room table looked right again, centered, stable, mine. I invited Ruth over for dinner Thursday night, made pot roast the way my wife used to. Ruth brought wine and conversation, and we ate slowly, talking about nothing important. The weather, the neighborhood, the new family moving in down the street. "It's good to see you like this," she said as we cleared the dishes. "Like what?" "Settled, like you belong here again." I smiled. "I do belong here. That's the point." She laughed and helped me load the dishwasher. Friday afternoon, I drove out to the mining site. My supervisor met me in the trailer office, spread blueprints across the table. "We need your opinion on the new shaft supports," he said. "Thompson thinks we should double reinforce, but that's going to push us over budget." I studied the plans, traced the load-bearing calculations with my finger, thought about 30 years of experience of knowing exactly what would hold and what would fail. "Thompson's right," I said. "Reinforce it. You don't cut corners underground, ever." He nodded, made notes on the plans. "That's what I thought. Just wanted to confirm." We spent the next hour going over safety protocols, equipment inspections, crew rotations, the kind of detailed work that kept people alive when they were working a mile below the surface. When I left, the sun was low and golden. I drove home with the windows down, radio playing something classic, mind quiet for the first time in months. The hardware store parking lot was half empty. I went in for more sandpaper, came out with paint samples, thought maybe I'd redo the guest bedroom, make it an actual guest room again, not a storage space for things I didn't want to look at. At the register, a woman behind me was arguing with the cashier about a return, something about a defective drill. The cashier was patient but firm. Store policy, no receipt, no return. "This is ridiculous," the woman said. "I bought it here 2 weeks ago." "I understand, ma'am, but without a receipt, I can't process a refund." The woman huffed, grabbed her drill, and stormed out. The cashier looked at me and sighed. Some days, I agreed. I paid for my supplies and left. That night, I sat on the back porch with a beer and listened to the crickets. The yard was overgrown, needed mowing, needed weeding. I'd let it go during the months Evan had been here. Too tired to care. Too focused on just surviving in my own space. Tomorrow, I'd deal with it. Tonight, I just sat and listened and let the quiet settle into my bones. Saturday morning, I tackled the yard, mowed in straight lines, pulled weeds from the flower beds my wife had planted 20 years ago, trimmed the hedge that separated my property from the Hendersons. Jim came out around 10, coffee in hand. "Looking good," he called over. "Thanks. Listen, Asher, about that dinner, I just want to say, don't worry about it. I felt terrible being there for that. It wasn't... Jim." I stopped mowing, leaned on the handle. "You didn't do anything wrong. You were a guest. This was between me and Evan." He nodded slowly. "Okay, but if you need anything, I'm right here." "I know. Thanks." He went back inside. I finished the lawn. By noon, the yard looked like itself again. Clean, maintained, cared for. I went inside, showered, made a sandwich, ate it standing at the kitchen counter while I looked out at my work. This was mine. This house. This yard. This life. And nobody was taking it from me again. Sunday, I went to church. First time in months. Sat in the back pew, listened to the sermon, didn't talk to anyone afterward. On the way out, the pastor stopped me. "Asher, good to see you." "You too, Pastor Frank. Everything okay? You've been absent." "Just dealing with some things at home. Family stuff." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Those can be the hardest. You need to talk. My door's always open." "I appreciate that." I left before he could ask more questions. The grocery store was busy for a Sunday afternoon. I took my time, filling the cart with things I actually wanted. Steak, fresh vegetables, the good coffee, ice cream I didn't have to share. At the checkout, the teenager bagging my groceries was chatting with the cashier about some concert. They laughed about something easy and light, and I found myself smiling. Young people, simple problems. Monday morning, Martin called. "Just checking in," he said. "How's everything?" "Good. He's been gone a week. No contact, no issues." "That's what we want to hear. If he does reach out, document it. Don't engage unless necessary." "Understood." "And Asher, you did the right thing. I hope you know that." "I'm starting to." We hung up. I went to my office and filed all the paperwork. The notice, the timeline, the bank records, everything went into a labeled folder that I put in the lockbox. Just in case. But I didn't think I'd need it. Evan was gone. Laura was gone. The house was mine again. Tuesday, I started on the guest bedroom, moved everything out, patched the nail holes in the walls, sanded, primed, painted a soft gray that made the room feel bigger. Ruth stopped by while I was working. "Need help?" she asked from the doorway. "I've got it, but thanks." She watched me work for a minute. "You're good at this, always have been." "My dad taught me, said a man should know how to take care of his space." "Smart man." "He was." She left me to it. I finished the first coat by evening, cleaned the brushes, stood back, and looked at the transformation. This room had been a dumping ground. Now it was becoming something again, something useful, something mine. Wednesday, I went back to the mining site. Spent the whole day underground, checking the new supports, talking to the crew, making sure everything was up to code. Down there, a mile below the surface, everything made sense. The rock was predictable. The physics were solid. You did the work right, and people stayed safe. Simple, clear, honest. At the end of the shift, the crew chief pulled me aside. "Heard you had some trouble at home," he said. "It's handled." "Good, because you seem different lately. More, I don't know, present." "I am." He nodded and clapped me on the shoulder. "Good, we need you present." I drove home as the sun set, mind clear, body tired in the good way that comes from real work. Thursday, I finished the guest bedroom. Second coat of paint, cleaned the windows, hung new curtains Ruth had given me from her linen closet. The room looked fresh, clean, ready. I stood in the doorway and imagined it. Someday, maybe a real guest, someone who appreciated the space, who respected boundaries, who understood that generosity wasn't permission to take over. Maybe, someday. Friday night, I sat in the garage and worked on the rocking chair. The oak was smooth under my hands. The joints fit perfectly. This was going to be something solid, something that lasted. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Text message. I looked. "Dad, we need to talk." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I set the phone face down on the workbench and went back to the chair. Not tonight, not yet, maybe not ever. The next morning, there were 3 more messages. "Dad, I'm serious. We need to talk. You can't just ignore me forever. I'm still your son." I deleted them without responding. Saturday afternoon, my phone rang. Evan's number. I let it go to voicemail. He called again an hour later. Again, I didn't answer. The voicemail notification appeared. I didn't listen to it. Sunday morning, he texted again. "Fine. If you won't talk, I'm coming over. Tonight. 8 p.m. I forwarded the message to Martin. His response was immediate. He has no right to enter. If he shows up, tell him to leave. If he refuses, call police. Do not engage beyond that. I replied, "Understood." At 7:30, I made dinner. Grilled chicken, salad, ate slowly at my dining room table, reading the newspaper. At 8, headlights swept across the front window. I didn't get up, just kept reading. The doorbell rang. I turned the page. It rang again. Then knocking. "Dad, I know you're in there. Open up." I folded the newspaper and walked to the door. Didn't open it. Just spoke through it. "You don't live here anymore, Evan. You need to leave. I just want to talk." "There's nothing to talk about." "Come on, Dad. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." "No." Silence. Then Laura's voice. "Mr. Trevon, please, we just want to work this out." "It's already worked out. The occupancy is terminated. You moved out. That's the end of it." "You can't just cut us off like this." Evan's voice was rising. "I'm your son. You owe me at least a conversation." "I don't owe you anything. I gave you 6 months of free housing. You responded by demanding rent in my own house. We're done." "This is insane. You're being completely unreasonable." I didn't respond. Just stood there, On my side of the door, in my house. More knocking. Harder now. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. Dad, what are you doing? The dispatcher answered. 911, what's your emergency? I need to report a disturbance. My former occupant has returned after being legally removed and is refusing to leave my property. What's your address? I gave it. Officers are on the way. Through the door, I heard Evan swear, heard car doors open and close, heard the engine start and tires screech as they pulled away. The patrol car arrived 5 minutes later. I explained the situation, showed them the documentation. They took notes, gave me a case number, said if he returned to call immediately. After they left, I locked the door and went back to my dinner. The chicken was cold. I didn't care. Just sat there in my quiet house and finished my meal. The phone buzzed one more time that night. This isn't over. I blocked the number. Monday morning, I called Martin. He showed up last night. And? I didn't let him in. He wouldn't leave. I called the police. Perfect. That's exactly what you should have done. Did you get a report number? Yes. Good. Keep that with your other documentation. If he continues, we can pursue a restraining order. Do you think it'll come to that? Hard to say. Some people accept reality quickly. Others need more convincing, but either way, you're protected. The law is on your side. Okay. Asher, don't let him shake you. You've done everything right. Stay the course. I thanked him and hung up. The rest of the day was quiet. I worked on the rocking chair, made progress on the rockers themselves, getting the curve just right. Ruth stopped by in the evening. Heard there was some excitement last night, she said. News travels. Patricia saw the police car. She was worried. It's fine. Evan tried to come back. I didn't let him in. He left. Good. She handed me a container. Soup? Thought you might want some. Thanks, Ruth. You holding up okay? I'm fine, really. She studied my face for a moment, then nodded. You are, aren't you? You seem settled. I am. She smiled. Good. That's really good, Asher. After she left, I heated the soup and ate it on the back porch, watching the sun set over my yard, my property, my space. Everything was exactly as it should be. The call came Tuesday morning. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Dad. Evan's voice. Tight. Angry. Don't call me again. We need to talk. About the house. About everything. There's nothing to discuss. You moved out. It's done. Laura and I have been talking to people. We have rights. No, you don't. Martin explained that very clearly. I'm coming over tonight, 8 o'clock. If you show up, I'm calling the police again. I'm bringing my lawyer. I don't care who you bring. The answer is the same. This is my house. You don't live here. You're not welcome here. I'm your son. And this is my property. Those two facts don't change each other. I hung up, called Martin immediately. He says he's coming tonight with a lawyer. Let him come. Document everything. Record if you can. Do not let them inside. If they try to force entry, call 911 immediately. At 7:45, I set my phone on the kitchen counter, camera ready to record. At 8 exactly, headlights in the driveway. 3 people got out. Evan, Laura, a man in a suit carrying a briefcase. I opened the door but stood in the frame, blocking entry. Mr. Trevin, the suited man stepped forward. I'm David Pacheco. I represent your son. We'd like to discuss a resolution to this situation. There's no situation. The occupancy was legally terminated. He moved out. That's the resolution. My client has invested significant time and resources into this property. We believe he's entitled to compensation. Your client lived here rent-free for 6 months. He's entitled to nothing. Evan pushed forward. Stop hiding behind lawyers. This is between you and me. No, this is between a property owner and a former occupant who won't accept reality. I'm your only son, and this is my only house. You tried to take it. You failed. Now leave. Pacheco raised a hand. Mr. Trevon, if we could just come inside and discuss this like reasonable adults. No. I'm simply trying to. I said no. You're on my property without permission. You have 30 seconds to leave before I call the police. Evan's face went red. You're really going to do this? Choose property over your own family. I'm choosing dignity over disrespect. There's a difference. He moved toward me. I stood my ground. Evan, don't. Pacheco grabbed his arm, but Evan shook him off and got right in my face. You'll regret this. Leave, now. He shoved me. Not hard. Just enough to make me step back. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. What are you doing? Evan's eyes went wide. Hello, what's your emergency? I need police. 428 Maple Drive. Former occupant has returned, refused to leave, and made physical contact. Officers are en route. Pacheco was already pushing Evan toward the car. We're leaving, right now. They scrambled into the vehicle and sped away before the sirens became audible. 2 officers arrived. I showed them the documentation, the notice, the previous report. They took statements, noted the escalation, gave me a new case number. You might want to consider a restraining order, one officer said. I will. After they left, I closed and locked the door, stood in my living room, my house, my space, mine. I called Martin. It's done. He came with a lawyer, tried to intimidate me, made physical contact. Police have it documented. Perfect. File for the restraining order tomorrow. I'll help you with the paperwork. Okay. I hung up and sat down at my dining room table, the table I'd built, in the house I'd bought, in the space I'd reclaimed. Evan was gone. Really gone. Not just physically, but legally, officially, permanently. I picked up my phone one last time, sent Martin a message, filed the paperwork. I want this finished. His response came immediately. I'll have it ready first thing in the morning. I set the phone down and looked around my house. Quiet, empty, perfect. I walked to the garage and picked up the rocking chair. The oak was smooth, the joints tight, the rockers perfectly curved. I carried it inside and placed it by the window in the living room. My chair, in my house, in my space. I sat down in it and rocked slowly, looking out at the street, at my yard, at everything I'd built and protected and reclaimed. This was mine, and nobody would ever take it from me again.